So we want to welcome you, Chris. Thank you so
Thanks.
much for coming to join us tonight.
Is it easier if I stand? Is it more
Stand
sensitive?
up and
A lot of, that's all true what you just heard. The thing is, it's important, I think, for the legislature to be on the side of community building, whether it's the regulation, whether it's helping business, whether it's, helping school. But none of that can happen without good transportation. None of it can happen without transit-oriented development, without a real plan that looks, 20, 30, 40 years into the future to see, how basically our state can build out our infrastructure in ways that develop thriving communities. And I look at Virginia and I say, I get envious because I think they're doing it right. Basically, a couple of years ago, the speaker said, look, he wasn't crazy about how he felt that the finance and the approach committees are sort of being played off each other by the DOT and the governor's office. So he created a position, which is they call it the Chief Transportation Financial Officer. Other people call it the Transportation Czar, which I don't use. But the point is to oversee transportation funding and spending and to develop, to help develop priorities, prioritize, project development and how we're, what we're going to do going forward to make sure that we're leveraging every dollar spent on transportation. Now we've had a lot of flux. We now have a new governor. The way my dashboard looks, and I think most of the people that look at the finances closely in our state, basically for transportation development, what they see is they see that it makes sense to talk about these things, to prioritize development in a way that certainly helps Fairfield County down here, because this is the biggest bottleneck, one of the biggest bottlenecks in the country, but also how we're going to use infrastructure as really the backbone of our economic growth going forward. And basically what you are left with is you see a special transportation fund that is running out of money, that is being, part for two reasons. One is the debt service on the bonds that have been used to put together past projects is eating into that. But also, because the Special Transportation Fund is funded primarily by gas receipts, because of hybrids and other fuel-efficient vehicles, there's just less revenue going into the Special Transportation Fund. So it's like, you either have to generate another stream of revenue, or you start taking money out of the general fund to fund transportation, and that's healthcare, education, aid for veterans, and on and on and on. So these are the tensions. These are the forces that are competing. So the discussion now, and you're going to hear a lot more about it, is tolls, like whether we should have them, how they should be put in place. So, for example, the governor ran on a platform of, well, we're going to tax toll rather, the vehicles just going through, cutting through Connecticut, the semis, the trucks cutting through Connecticut, because they don't really have a nexus here, they don't really have a foothold here, so, seems that they'd be a good target. Well, that only gets us about 25% of the way there to fully fund the transportation fund, to be, and when you consider what the Special Transportation Fund does, it's not only just new projects, but we have 332 bridges that have to be brought to a state of good repair. Meaning there's a state of good repair basically means like passing. that's like the minimum level of quality they have to be at. So to bring 332 bridges to a state of good repair, to be able to plan and target communities for transit-oriented development, because it's not just East Norwalk. We're talking about Wall Street. There are other places around the state that need development. We have there are a lot of projects that have been started, but not too well integrated. So how to make all of that work requires money and planning and focus. So having a transportation fund that's funded, frankly, is very important to our own survival going forward. Now, how we get there is another matter. In the last election, the voters passed a referendum basically creating what they call a lockbox that would protect, ensure that any money going into the special transportation fund can't get swept for any other reason. You know, can't get raided, can't get, so it's like if tolls are gonna go up, that or any other revenue, whether it's that or gas taxes raised or some other form, that it can't be pulled out of there and spent on something else. So that's pretty much where we are on that. That discussion is being had now. Now the governor came out yesterday, and I'm really not shilling for the governor as much as I'm just trying to catch everybody up on where the conversation is. The governor came out yesterday and said he's moved, he's expanded from his position where you're just going to tax tolls on vehicles cutting through the state, and it wants to look at tolling more broadly, the general public. The issue is this: we haven't had tolls in Connecticut since really the mid '80s. The early there were two tragedies in the '80s. There was Minas River Bridge collapse, which and by and large everybody feels that collapsed because due to a lack of maintenance on one hand, and then there was in Stratford there was a toll booth accident where I believe 4 or 5 people tragically lost their lives there. When that happened, tolls were basically taken out of the state of Connecticut, and since then we haven't really had a conversation about tolls going forward. Meanwhile, every state around us has implemented tolls in some form or another, and in fact, Connecticut is really the only state on the eastern seaboard that doesn't have any kind of tolls at all. So it's really, this is combined with where we are in our state's history, where we need to go, how we need to go forward with what we feel our priorities are for transportation. These are the stakes, and I think that first of all, let me back up for a second. I just want to thank Diane and the board for inviting me here, because I know this committee, I know how active you are, and I know you have great questions. So it's I don't mind if somebody has a question they just want to just yell out in the middle. I'm good either way. I'm here to work with you. So that's going to be a big part of this. If we don't get this right, I'm concerned about our capacity to develop as a state economy going forward, because we're basically we're going to be lagging behind other states that are prioritizing infrastructure. Other states are prioritizing marijuana. That's a whole other thing.
Here, let me just stop, and we're going to go back to the.
Okay.
But can we just let Chris finish up, and then what we'll open it up to questions.
No, I just said this is because. No, this is fine. This is good. I see this kind of like a working thing anyway.
Well, we ran into a problem. You're saying you want to fund the transit with the gas receipts, but in general, the transit is to reduce vehicles on the road. So it kind of.
Well, I'm saying that. That's the way. What's happening now is our infrastructure is being funded by gas receipts going into the special transportation fund.
Yeah, but I mean, what's the point if you're going to raise the taxes on fuel and people are going to drive less and use transportation? But then again, you're just going to cut yourself on your own transportation project.
They're not suggesting that you raise the taxes on the fuel.
They
They're
did.
talking about putting tolls.
No. I haven't got their tolls yet.
No, you're saying basically, well, what's the point of raising revenue through gas receipts if we're trying to keep people off the road?
But exactly. It's like.
But we don't have the money to keep people off the road. Think about it this way, what some of the states are doing, where they're planning more with transit-oriented development.
But the problem is they're relying on people's need to travel. What happens when people can't afford to travel and not are forced to public transportation?
But this is the thing, and
revenue.
You're making a fair point. But what businesses are looking for, what communities are looking for, what states are looking for is cheap, efficient ways to move people to and from work, to and from their homes, and in a way it doesn't put a huge burden on travelers. So you need to have these options. People want basically efficient, walkable communities where they can access cheap, efficient public transportation. So yeah, I'd like to pull more cars off the road. I don't know that, I don't know that.
Human, that's just like, don't travel, just stick to your little box. I mean, people like to travel. I mean, if you're saying you want everything completely local, I understand you don't support the local community, but.
Well, but we're also relatively close to New York City, so we know that it's not going to be just, keeping people, local and transit-oriented development. You need to have both. And
most of our money comes from people getting paid in New York City.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's think about that.
That's true.
So you're going to put in tolls, so another revenue. Why don't you just boost up the gas tax instead of you're going to go out and you're going to create a whole other bureaucracy to collect tolls. Why don't you just up the gas tax if you need more money? Because why are you coming up with a whole other? What are you going to hire another 10,000 people? I'm in IT, a bunch of IT people. You know how hard it is to do this. You're going to spend $100 million to collect. It's going to take you 10 years to break even.
So, I think I learned through one of our meetings, actually, very informative, that on the Metro North, speaking of getting people off the road, on the Metro North board, Connecticut has no representation. Is that correct?
That is correct.
On Metro North?
Yeah.
So, as transportation chief, have you considered being a representative for Metro North? Because I don't know if anyone else has tried taking the train during the holiday break. It is absolutely stupid. You stand for an hour and 20 minutes on a train that is so packed.
I've commuted for 15 years, and I agree that it's.
But we have no representation in Connecticut.
So you understand?
I totally understand.
The state of Connecticut has no representation on that board. How do we get someone on that board?
It's part of that, we've been trying for a long time to do that. I think we should have representation on the Metro North board. I think that we have we have a new person coming in who's heading up the DOT. He used to run used to run Metro North, so I think he'll it's like I'm supposed to actually sit down and meet with him, but my feeling is that we should have somebody on that board. It's to your point, given how much revenue comes.
So what's the percentage of the revenue
real
taxes that people that work in New York pay in Connecticut? I'd love to know that number. Yeah. Because you have to work on the trains going to New York, the highways going to New York.
Right.
And not, because if that's 80%, you should be putting 80% of the money in.
Right.
But you're not. I know you're putting on 20% of the money.
No,
So, Chris, can I jump in here for a second on the MTA board issue? Because they
Sure.
learned that from me. And
Okay.
I just want to make sure you
Either
didn't
one.
walk away with half the information. The reason we have nobody on the board and are not eligible to ever put anybody on the board is a result of the way the whole organization functions. The MTA is a quasi-governmental authority of New York State.
Yeah.
Connecticut, at the time when there was a possibility of us being part of that, we opted to operate our own trains. We own all the infrastructure in Connecticut, all the bridges and the rails and the wires, and all the cars. If you look at the cars, some of them have a Connecticut state badge on them, some of them don't. The ones that do are the ones we own, and the ones we don't. The only reason the trains go across the borders and operate in both states is due to an interoperability agreement between the two states in which we are eligible to have our trains travel back and forth and collect the revenue and do all those things. Well, we are not eligible to be on their own board because it is not a Connecticut authority. It's a New York State authority.
So how can we be more involved, put more of our trains on the tracks, put more cars on our train, put more cars on the trains that go through the state? If we want less cars on the road, or if we want more revenue from, we want to make transportation easier.
Right.
What do we do to
my
make
thinking
that?
is that first we're responsible for more revenue. If we make our transportation system more efficient, if we make basically if we make parking more accessible, if we make it so more people can use our system efficiently, I think you know, it's incumbent on us to push back, and I know, you know, to your point, you know, it is, the agreement is what it is, but at the same time, we are responsible for, we need to represent the amount of revenue that we generate. You know, we need to have that, that representation. So I think it's something that, you know, that I have to push for, and it's something that, that I have to go to my leadership and say, this is, you know, this has been unfair for a long time. And you know, and if they say no, we just keep pushing. I mean, look, we have a governor from this neck of the woods. We have a DOT commissioner from this neck of the woods. And it's like, my feeling is, those are the people that, if somebody's going to get it, I'd like to think that these people could. But, you know, but yeah, I have to work at it. So I think I can.
Because we can come, I know you're a little bit more informal, but I want to make sure that we get all the topics in and people have an opportunity. Jim, I'm going to come right back to you, but I just want to, there's two other kind of hot items in East Norwalk too. If you can just address them briefly so we get them on the table and we don't lose them before you go, but we can come back to tolls and rail and everything as well. The two that are always topics, or one that's always topic now for East Norwalk is the walk bridge.
Sure.
And so when you talk in terms of the funding of programs versus the lack of a revenue stream, a lot of people look to things first to say, are they essential or not? Are we looking at a safety issue versus a nice to have issue?
Yeah.
And for a lot of people, that's the crux of the walk bridge and the peripheral projects with
it's
lowering roads,
the peripheral projects that I'm hearing the most about.
The other one, so if we can speak to that, and then the other one is a newer one, which a lot of you folks saw here last month, which is the engineers proposed, DOT engineers proposed redesign of the exit 16 interchange to have what's called a diverging diamond pattern. You can Google it, there's a lot on the internet, but we'll probably have it on our agenda again next month, just so you folks know.
Yeah.
That's probably,
well, let me start with
multi-million.
the diamond first, because my part
and
of
then
the
we'll
reason,
open it back up.
Part of the reason I'm here is I need to hear back from you, because this is a relatively new issue, but everybody has an opinion on it. So my thinking is that you know, I can't represent you unless I hear really what your thoughts are on this. I've heard basically the people's concerns with it are the scope and the impact that it's going to have on East Norwalk. We got into this with the Merritt 7 interchange. The first drafts of the Merritt 7 interchange were like nothing I'd seen on this planet anyway. I mean, it was just, you know, 4-story high ramps, you know, and cloverleafs. So it's like, but, you know, we pushed back on it, or pushed back against it. So it's like, again, I need to hear back from you on this. As far as the walk bridge, because it's a combination state federal project, and given the importance of it, you know, vis-a-vis the, you know, it's really every time the bridge breaks down, every time it's inaccessible, you've effectively cut off New England from the rest of the country. You know, I'm overstating it a bit, but you know, we don't have an efficient way to travel from, you know, up the eastern corridor. So, but at the same time, I'm getting a lot of pushback by saying, really, this particular design, this particular solution, it's an albatross, and what can we do about it? So it's, you know, my feeling is that, you know, I think it's overwrought, but I think that you know, again, I want to hear what people have to say here, because this is, you know, this is representative government, and I think that you know, that we are in a situation where you know, we have money set aside, but, you know, again, we're because the transportation fund, you know, our you know, receipts are going down. You know, the governor and DOT have to make priorities or make decisions. So,
well, I would say on those two projects, and we can throw other topics in then on top of this now too, but if you look at the walk bridge and exit 16, most reasonable people would agree with engineers and the DOT that something has to be done.
Right.
We can't have the Metro North Bridge that fails and we do shut down essentially these
every July, yeah.
It's a matter of how it gets done and when, and you know, what the costs are and what's reasonable there.
Right.
Things that don't move at all generally don't break down as much or, you know, cost as much. So that's one piece. The diverging diamond, just so people know, it's a complete redesign of the exit 16 northbound and southbound exit and entrance ramps, and it's a design that actually spreads out the whole access to get to over the bridge there, where you're actually crossing over in a diamond pattern to get to the left, to take a left to go south, and then to get to the right to go
And
north.
it's safer.
And again, so you would need, generally, engineers consider it the safest thing because you're never going in front of an opposing traffic. However, mostly where it's done in the United States, you have a lot of land. You have acres and acres and acres.
It
In order
probably works
for-
great in Kansas.
Exactly, so if you would
This
go
is,
to Texas
but again, keep in mind
but
that with the Merritt 7 interchange, you were talking about mile-long, on-ramps
Right.
and off-ramps. Bless their hearts, they're doing it in the name of safety, and I get that, but does it have to go to that degree?
Right.
Chris, I
And
have a
yeah,
different question about the divergent diamond project. Why is anybody even talking about it when it's not in the STIP? The 2018 STIP was updated last year based on conversations that happened all throughout 2017.
Right.
It's not in there, I checked yesterday.
Yeah,
Honestly, it doesn't
So,
even
I
matter.
mean, with all the other stuff that's been sitting around waiting to get
I agree.
funded, why is this project moved ahead and
right.
completely outside of planning
it's
documents?
probably one where we would look for you, Chris, to step in at this point, because we first heard rumors of it last June, and it was so preliminary and so rumor that we're not in the rumor business here. But it seems to be the point now where they're working closely with city engineers and DPW on this design. So I think it's something we need to hit the pause button on, because the potential for eminent domain and property takings there alone,
Right.
going down to,
No,
say,
you're right that
Rite
these
Aid,
projects
and
have-
it's
Well,
massive.
they have a way of gaining momentum even when they're not even officially part of the list of
So
projects
I
to be
would
completed.
express that.
To Deb's point.
Yeah.
Is your question?
You
And then-
mentioned
And then you
the Route 7 Merritt Parkway interchange. And I was at the beginning fighting against that. And the reason that we have any kind of leverage was because of Section 106, because the
Right.
entire parkway is listed in the National Register.
Right.
Not so much I-95.
No. Yeah.
There are some properties around there, especially the White House right on the edge of the highway, that would be eligible for listing in the National Register, which might trigger 106. But without that kind of a process, nobody really has much of a voice.
Yeah. Maybe we should have an historian take a closer look at it.
Pardon me?
Maybe we should have an historian take a closer look at it.
Yeah.
Well, we do have a voice, and we're lucky that Chris is here tonight, because Chris is our voice, and so just know
Well, I
that.
was teasing him.
So we're aware of it, and we hope you'll be the voice so that we
Yeah.
have this dialogue before it gets to, a lot of times these things just appear to
They
be
get
a
go
proposal,
fever.
but they're a done deal. Jim, and
But-
then I'll come back, Jimmy.
So you mentioned that the state has hardly any money to take care of the existing bridges, 300-something bridges, to put them in good shape, which are used daily and whatever.
Yeah.
The pink elephant is the Walk Bridge. I know there's federal money coming towards it, but the state's gonna have to kick in money too.
Right.
Those bridges, yes, they broke down twice, I think I recall in the last 5 years. Cut us off. Welded shut. It's a dead-end river. You don't need to go in and out, even if you have to pay the people on the other side of that bridge money.
Right.
Simple logic, explain to me in simple terms why that can't be done and save money.
Right.
Did everybody hear Jim?
I'd like to second that same question.
Okay.
And there was a third.
We'll third it.
Could you
Well-
tell me what the Walk Bridge is?
Okay, wait,
It just
so we have a
sounds-
question on the Walk Bridge itself. So coming over from South Norwalk into East Norwalk, there's a railroad bridge that it has to do with walking.
Metro North Road?
It's a Metro North Bridge.
Okay, so I
And
go
that
through
bridge now
all the
moves to allow commercial maritime traffic there. And so it opens and closes, but it's over 100 years old and it's in desperate need of repair. And it's the only line that continues the transportation into New England.
The last,
All right, so I have to say one thing.
So the question that Jim had, let him answer this first.
Basically-
and then we'll go on to the-
No, basically, the issue was, to your point, Jim, they felt they needed a bridge that opened up. But the thing is, there are people upstream that are saying, we really don't need this, and is there a solution on the table where the people that are upstream can just basically be bought out and say, you know, that you really don't need this after all. And I think that's been on the table as a point of discussion, but it hasn't moved. I think there's I think part of it is because there's still a question of the underlying bridge. Does that need to be replaced? And I think that's part of the issue. I've seen about 8 hands going up. What?
Part of the issue of having to have the bridge be a movable bridge and allow that navigable traffic upstream has to do with the federal designation that is a navigable channel.
Right.
The feds can remove that, and our Congressman Hines has indicated that he is willing to go and make that request, as he has done for another river elsewhere in Connecticut with a similar issue. But he has explained to us repeatedly that they will not undertake and make that request to remove a navigability designation from a harbor over the objection or without the request of the locals. So Chris is kind of stuck in the middle here because nobody from the city of Norwalk has been willing to make that request. So Congress can help us.
Because I met with Susan Bicewitz, and she had spoken to the governor prior to the election about the walk bridge. They looked at it, and they also felt, just like you said, that they really didn't need a movable bridge, but they did not want to upset local politics at that point in time.
Oh, but you know, that's the thing though. It's like, so what if they're upset? I mean, you know, their job though is, I mean, if you have a congressman that wants to work with us, then, and you know, I would think that it's part of it's also on the city for them to come to an agreement, because it's the only way. I mean, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's the only way that, you know, we got any traction with Merit 7, when, you know, the city, you know, woke up and also decided to play along. I'm not sure how useful they were, but it's like, you know, the city does have to, you know, is the city going to be a hindrance, or are they going to, you know, work with the local people? Because in East Norwalk, this is not a popular project. A
meeting between the local politicians, Mayor Rilling and Governor Lamont, to try to have a conversation, just to look at, you know, another option, which is for a fixed bridge and what is entailed for that. I know that part of the funds came from.
Yes, your question.
From the federal government.
Right.
But if you go back and you look at, in New Jersey, there was also a bridge that was going to be built, and they did get some federal funds, and they were actually able to stop that project, and I don't even think that they paid the federal government back the money that they had. So it's not too late to take a look at other alternatives, or maybe you can save some money on doing the lift bridge and put it back into your transportation fund for something where it's really needed. I'm asking you if you can help set up that.
Yes,
yes, I can.
Right.
You might as well leverage the bridge against New York.
Say it again?
You might as well leverage the bridge against New York and Metro North. It's a bottleneck. It's a corridor. It's an
eastern
New
corridor.
Jersey all the way up north.
But it's not just New York. I know what you're saying, but it's not just New York. There are other.
That's what I'm saying. It literally ties in about 10 states, just that one little bridge.
Yeah.
You might as well get.
So what you're saying is we have some negotiating
We
leverage.
have leverage.
Exactly.
We have 6 lanes of a train.
Yeah.
We can either close it, open it, or get more money for it and actually add to our own pocket, not our pockets, but.
Okay, so I want to get everybody at once too. So is there anyone else here who hasn't had a question or a comment or an observation for Chris? Can we go to 7:45 with you? Is that?
Look, I'm here. I'm working with you guys, so I'll stay as long as you want me here.
Okay. these are like really hot items for Ian and Avery. Yes.
I guess I have what I would
Yep.
call a dumb question. Who's in favor of keeping the bridge? Is there a small amount of fishermen that need to go up and down it? What is the
They haven't
revenue that's
contacted me.
generated by the opening and closing of the bridge?
You know what?
Tell you those facts, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
There's been, over the last couple of years, there's about 100 openings per year. About 20 of them, and again, my facts are not perfect, but about 20 of them are just for regular openings just to make sure it opens. And I think there's one boat that goes through, it's not Divine, with their tug, and I think that's another 20 or 30. But we have that information available. If you'd like, we can get that to you. So really, the openings are not that many. And Divine can get their product through with a push-pull tug. Throughout the world, there are low-profile bridges that do not open. And there is commerce through there. And there's also dredging that's available with a low-profile bridge throughout the world. So there can be a fixed bridge, and tall-masted ships can take their mast down and come through. So there are possible solutions to having a little bridge.
If you are interested too, I'll just volunteer it then too. Mrs. Penna sits on the board of Harbor Keepers, which is a nonprofit group looking to, collaborate with others on, fixing this or looking at alternatives. So you can certainly reach out to her after the meeting. Chris, I read in your bio, and I don't think I was aware of this, with your formation of the Port Authority. And it just reminded me now that a lot of questions I've always had too, when I see people nod their heads, is why haven't we invested more in rail and barge in terms of moving goods?
We need to be.
Would also
I think I think we're behind the curve on freight, on utilizing interstate freight rail, not inter but intra, and linking that up with our deep water ports and where applicable along our coast. I think that these are resources that are basically maybe we want to push for this in the first place. I think that this is where I think the governor and the DOT need to have a plan to leverage this. And I think it is. I mean, it's in its beginning stages, but I think that initially, there was some talk about Amazon coming to Connecticut. Mm-hmm. I'm not going there, but the question remained more about, well, what if a larger entity did come into the state, or what are we able to do for entities that want to come into the state of Connecticut, and how are we able to move goods and services more efficiently? Are we utilizing our freight rail? And I think that we're not. So it's a big deal. It's an important thing that we have to that I want to see. I want to see more coming out of the DOT about what we're going to do about it.
I hope there's a new window of opportunity for us too, with a new governor, maybe fresh eyes on things. But we also have a new DOT commissioner. I'll just say that could be a good thing for East Norwalk, whereas in the past.
Well, his background is actually DOT commissioners usually have one background or another. It's either road and concrete or rail, and the new guy is rail. He made his more. I'm not selling the guy, but basically he understands how to leverage rail. I think in a useful way, but I think the ways that we think could be better.
Maybe
I can make suggestions, and push for things. So.
Hopefully it gets us a seat at the table. We were talking about Tracy. Did you have a question?
Well, my question is going back to funding for the state. And one of our laws, Connecticut's one of 12 states that allows open alcohol in a vehicle. And as a result of our non-compliance to that federal law, we don't lose the funds, but we are required to divert funds that would otherwise go to infrastructure. So what's your position on?
I support it. The issue has been that it's gotten.
What do you support? Do you support open alcohol in court, or making it illegal?
I want closed. Here's basically.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Basically, the issue is that because Connecticut still has open container law in the cars, meaning somebody else other than the driver can have an open container of alcohol in the car, that we're foregoing federal funds or aid to aid for our state. That's sort of the bigger picture. The issue, though, is that it's gotten into sort of an inter-party fight the last several times that it's come up. What people are pushing against, the reason why there are people in the legislature pushing against it is because they feel that it opens any car up to more search and seizure than is necessary. So that basically, they feel the police can just pull somebody over and say, they suspect they have an open container, and then use that to search the car. I'm not saying I agree with it, because my feeling is that the safety of everybody in the car it takes precedent, and so I supported every time the law came up for a vote. But that's why it's fallen by the wayside the last couple of times that it's come up.
Can you be specific to how we would benefit if it became illegal?
I think that you're talking about in reducing the amount of instances where people can drink in the car, so there's less alcohol being passed around. I think.
No, I mean the funds. The funds.
Oh,
yeah, that's just a revenue source right there.
Sorry.
We know that, and as of one of 12 states that still allow it, I feel like we should be while I have enjoyed a roadie, I don't believe in it. Just being honest. Fund-wise.
How much are we talking about here?
Yeah.
There isn't really.
Let me put it this way. I don't have an exact dollar amount. I can have it for the next meeting. I can get an exact dollar amount for you. But my feeling is that we can't afford to be leaving any dollar on the table in any form, given our state finances.
A dollar or $100 million?
No, it's not $100 million, but I think it's in the low millions. So I think that it's an important amount. It's an important amount of money, and frankly, it's also what it says, and I think there's that aspect of it too. I thought I saw a hand.
The former transportation director, Redeker, had a meeting at City Hall in Norwalk. And one of the things that he said was that he has no money in the budget for yellow paint. And the reason being is because he owes so much in interest on loans that they used, that they needed to pay back the interest. So most of their funds was going back to pay back interest.
Yeah.
If that's still happening and we're still borrowing, the money that you're trying to accumulate for transportation is still going back to pay interest and not for the yellow paint or the repair. At what point does that?
The way that the Special Transportation Fund is structured, it was basically structured in a way that it would pay for the debt service for bonded projects, okay, for larger ticket items under the Let's Go CT plan, which I don't know how many people know what this is, but Let's Go CT is basically like a list of 100 million, multi-billion state projects, transportation projects, whether it's the Mixmaster or you name it, but basically around the state of Connecticut. The point is that these are being paid for out of the Special Transportation Fund, but the debt service, when you go to sell these bonds on the market, when you go you don't want to go with geo bonds. I mean, you really want to, what attracts Wall Street and what makes these bonds sellable is something called special tax obligation bonds. So the tax revenue on those is
I don't know, man. It's kind of about high volatility right now.
We had problems marketing them last summer, and that was not good. That was painful to hear, and so when we're in that situation, it's I believe that the Special Transportation Fund has to be configured in a way so we're basically the debt service is not coming out of the principle that we need to buy yellow paint, among other things.
So you're
And-
saying we have to pay the bonds before?
Correct.
we spend it?
Yeah. Well,
You
no,
have
it's
to
not,
Guarantee the bonds with taxes.
it's, I mean, we're not insolvent yet, but that's where it's heading. And-
Because you got to
Yeah.
And what's the benefit of the lockbox at all then? If
you keep
the,
selling these bonds. You just sold them last time.
No, that's what I'm saying.
From my understanding, what I read up this year, we're about 11th in the whole United States for close to insolvency. Chicago's first. So,
Yeah, it
we're
doesn't
not
make me
far
happy,
away.
but yeah,
We need to do something kind of, you know,
I agree
a
with
year
you.
and a half.
Yeah.
If not, we're screwed with the pension coming up in December.
Yeah, that's right. On a slightly different topic, but still on rail and still on transportation, has there been any thought about increasing service on the Danbury line, electrifying it, making it two-way? Surely there's technology that allows that to happen.
I'd love to do it tomorrow. I think it should be. I don't think I would get a fight out of Gail Abiel on it.
That would eliminate the whole.
Because look, my feeling is that you would open up that whole section of Connecticut. I think that for for residential, for business, for everybody. So look
So that goes back to Route 7, you know?
well, it goes back to when Roland deactivated the spur lines, and we never got back on track, so to speak, with that, and that is an area that I think that would help us greatly.
Here,
It was like a way to force Super 7 into existence, but that's never going to happen.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
well, that was the whole Reading, Reading Ridgefield area. Just kind of bottleneck. They didn't want to expand it. I included Reading and the railroad on the side. It's just like there's marshland, so it's a lot more development than needed.
Well, it's difficult to do, but there's got to be places where there are sidings, there's got to be technology.
From my experience,
I
driving
don't
those
know.
roads, it's like 5 feet and then marsh.
Right, oh, and you can't
Yeah.
double track it all the way,
No,
there's no
you can't.
question.
It's a single
But
track.
there's got to be some other way to do it, I mean, I don't know what that is.
Well, I'll get back to you. I agree.
Chris, what's the best mechanism for us to keep up to date transportation and, the other committees that you sit on? Because by the time we really get an understanding of something, it comes up to public hearings so fast and we don't even stand a chance to talk to you about it or comment on it. And
No, I basically, it's I think the best way, because I have a newsletter, but I was keeping away from making it really heavily transportation, but I think that clearly you want that. I mean, and you want a deeper dive on the stuff. So I think that, tell you what, if you want my newsletter, because I'm basically in the process of revamping it anyway, let Diane know, and I'll make sure that, I'll get your email addresses.
Online, right?
Yeah, and we'll go that way, because that's, you want real-time information, and this way, if you have, let's just go that way.
And also, I think coming back too is like, I think, I'll volunteer all of us, if you guys are okay with it, to kind of use us as a sounding board too. You have a whole room
You guys
here of
do your
people
homework.
who
This
are
is the thing.
engaged
This
in-
is a great group, and I'm not just saying it. I mean, you have a good reputation, and I think that if you look back in Norwalk's history, a lot of Norwalk was shaped by the quality of neighborhood groups that really got into the issues and moved policy forward. I mean, that's been our history, and this is part of that. So this is. By all means, just let me know what you think.
Are there any really things that waste money by the government of Connecticut that haven't been approached or thought of? I mean, is there an open window somewhere where money is flowing out and could be corrected?
Yeah, I think, it's. I think, like, for example, because I sit on the Appropriations Subcommittee for Transportation, last year, the commissioner, Ben Redeker, came forward with, he wanted 30 new positions, but he hadn't filled all the positions he asked for the year before, but he wanted the money for the positions, so I said no, so I basically closed that window, to use your term. I think you go on approach. I mean, you go committee by committee. I think that there have been real efforts to cut down on the amount of wasteful spending in corrections. I think there's been a lot of actual positive work being done in how we do that. But look, I guarantee you, it's like if you give me a budget in any subcommittee, I can find something. But my purview really is transportation, judicial, and regulation. So I mean, I figure in those committees, I should probably be able to close some windows for you. But I'm sure there are some other windows I haven't seen.
Michelle and then Mark. Did you have your hand up, Michelle? Okay, Mark.
Go ahead.
I was just saying, do you think that the new commissioner might be open to readdressing some things that Commissioner Rediker just shut down? And I am specifically thinking about the rail bridge and the lowering winding East Avenue and that 14th clearance.
Yeah, I mean, I think.
Because we all.
I don't want to overpromise. The men's not here, so my feeling is that I'm working on getting a meeting with him, and I plan to bring this stuff up. I think that it's everybody has a different take on it. I think his background, he seems more of a problem solver, but I don't want to oversell him. But he seems like an interesting guy. So I look forward to bringing this stuff up with him. So.
We'd love to have him at East Norwalk to come down. Really, seriously, we just have a forum.
I've already invited him
here and.
Sure.
When you're talking infrastructure, years ago you didn't include this because you didn't have it, but now you do. Internet.
Yeah.
I know this state supported net neutrality, or at least we were.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how solid is that? Because there are a number of states that didn't agree with what was coming out of the Oval Office.
This basically, as far as I know, they're about. I mean, I worked on net neutrality on a federal level during the Obama years through NCSL, National Conference of State Legislatures. I thought having basically net neutrality as a not piecemeal, not state by state, but just as one set of rules for the road it made more sense. Now, since the FCC has gone back on that, and there's been about 4 or 5 states that have done their own version. I think 3 or 4 of those states have already been enjoined by lawsuits. So there's that stuff is still being worked out.
Yeah, I know.
Doesn't mean that that's not the case in Connecticut. But it's there's Senator Duff has introduced legislation for net neutrality. I'm always going to ask, what if does it do for our state's competitive? So I'm maybe looking at an IT guy here for some insight on that, but it's like when we were talking about the Amazon tax, basically taxing goods being sold by Amazon affiliates in the state of Connecticut. My first question was, are we doing anything to make ourselves less competitive vis-a-vis? Are we basically having our affiliates in Connecticut tax goods, whereas other states that hadn't passed an Amazon tax still are still selling things tax-free, and therefore are we making ourselves less competitive? So my question is always going to be like, are we doing the same thing with net neutrality, or are we not? So it's and that's where I am on this. I mean, I sit on the Energy Committee. We haven't had hearings yet on the new configuration of the net neutrality bill, but it'll be coming up, I think, maybe even the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, but we are at that stage without the net. How are some people going to work?
Oh, we need it.
Because I know a lot of people who used to have to drive to the office. Now I'm one of them. I mean, I don't have to. I work. I don't have to. I go to the office once a week. I can work from home the rest of the week.
Mm-hmm. So, but I'm not sure.
We're talking about keeping cars off the road.
No, but what's the heart of your question?
Well, I mean, if we're going to expand the net and have access to information in a proper fashion, instead of having slow lanes, fast lanes, so on and so forth, it will impede people's ability to work.
Yeah.
Okay, did you
And
have?
ability to get information. I mean, I can go home right now, and I can easily get into the Command and General Staff College.
Yeah, you'll just have to pay for it, that's it.
Yeah, that's
Right.
It's just gonna be more expensive.
It's gonna go the way of cable television.
It'll just cost you more.
Right, the idea is
That's-
that having to
there's no
pay a
difference.
premium.
You're still
for
gonna
this.
get the internet.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
How much you pay.
Sure. And Charlie doesn't cover
It
regulating
takes so
prices.
much bandwidth,
Okay.
and it's slowing us along.
Cheaper, yeah.
We're just about quarter road. If you wanted, Bishop, do you have any,
Can I throw it too?
thanks, Sarah?
Are there initiatives going on in Connecticut that might promote more work from home scenarios? I guess less traffic on the road, maybe home,
Wait, Sarah, can you speak up a little bit? We can't hear you down
Yeah.
there.
She was asking if there are initiatives that are promoting more work from home or telecommuting
yeah.
or,
Yeah, good question.
and I know there have been in the past, but you know I don't know. Like for example, one way you can promote that is you can work with businesses and say, hey, like you know, perhaps you know we'll give you a tax credit if you know X percentage of your workforce if you let them telecommute or something like that. I mean I'm not sure that that's happened recently, but that's something that you know we are in the effort to try to take you know people off the roads. I think it's a
I'll tell
good
you why
idea.
it's also interesting to me, besides just taking people off the roads, is that I think that it can make for a more desirable place to live. If
Yeah.
you want people moving here, who I certainly work with a large workforce that's all over the country, the world, and when you feel like you have options and you can live somewhere and, you know, and that's a possibility, it's desirable.
Well, I think that I think that what New Haven is doing with making their community more accessible for pedestrian traffic, but also for business. I mean, I think they have a very tight. I think their Chamber of Commerce works well with their business leaders. Well, what I'm saying is that you know it'd be nice to have you know more active local towns, you know, and by keeping people.
Cheaper than widening highways, sort of where my brain is.
Yeah. Although somebody I was talking to the other day was thrilled because they're moving to Texas and they have 6 lanes of roads. But I think like you know just one last aside on that is there was you know when there was a question of whether or not we should do the deceleration lane going into Stanford, that actually saves like 7 or 8 minutes on people's commute. So like something like the Diamond, I'm not sure if that's like the way to go, but if there's a way to keep people safe through that interchange, but also speed up the flow of traffic through that intersection, that may make a lot of sense. But that drifts well away from the heart of your question. But it's a good point though. You make a good point.
We'll take one more. Anybody we haven't heard from yet? Or?
AP Reuters.
Bishop?
I don't know where all this fits in, and I'm not nearly as informed.
We're spitballing at this point. It's okay.
But I know that when the longest part of any trip I take is the 5 minutes from my house to Camden exit 16 interchange. There's so many traffic lights.
Yeah, I knew we were
Why
going
do there
to
have to be 6 traffic lights?
You're gonna
7.
add one too.
Something's got to be done. Something's
Yeah, there's something about that note that, you know, at the end of, you know, coming from the north, that one turn takes forever.
The lights should be in sync this year. Fewer of them, the whole thing is a mess.
That's a city.
We want to thank you so much for your time. We hope you'll come back again.
Sure.